The night was calm, the streetlights were glowing, and I thought I had everything a woman could ever ask for. A loving husband, a loyal best friend, and a home full of laughter. But what I didn't know was that the two people I trusted the most were secretly planning the cruelest betrayal of my life. And when the truth came out, it destroyed me in ways I never thought possible. My name is Sarah, and for as long as I can remember, my best friend Emily had been like a sister to me. We shared secrets, laughed until our stomachs hurt, cried over heartbreaks, and promised to stand by each other no matter what. When I married David, it was Emily who held my hand at the altar and whispered, "He's perfect for you, Sarah. Never let him go." At that moment, I truly believed I was the luckiest woman alive. I had a husband who adored me and a best friend who celebrated my happiness as if it were her own. After my marriage, Emily became a constant part of our lives. She would drop by unannounced, sometimes with desserts, sometimes with a bottle of wine, always saying she just wanted to spend more time with us. I never minded. Why would I? David seemed to enjoy her company too, and I felt proud that the two most important people in my life got along so well. We cooked together, played games, even went on road trips. I thought nothing could ever break the bond we shared, but looking back, the signs were always there. Small things, fleeting moments I ignored. Like the time David walked into the kitchen, slipped his hand around my waist, and kissed me on the cheek. I noticed Emily's eyes linger on him a little too long. Or the evening he complimented my new dress, and her smile faltered just for a second before she forced it back. I dismissed it every time, because she was my best friend. She could never betray me, or so I believed. One evening, Emily came over with her usual energy. We ordered pizza, poured wine, and settled into the living room. David and I argued playfully about which movie to watch, but Emily sided with him every single time. David laughed, teasing me about being outnumbered, while Emily's gaze softened on him in a way that made my stomach twist. I brushed it off quickly. It had to be my imagination. Later that night, after Emily had left, I started cleaning up the living room and found a red lipstick tucked between the sofa cushions. It wasn't mine. I hadn't worn that. Shade in years, my heart skipped a beat. Then I remembered Emily's bold red lips that evening. She must have dropped it. Still, as I held it in my hand, something about it unsettled me. The next morning, I left the lipstick on the coffee table, planning to return it to Emily. But before I could mention it, David walked in, spotted it, and said casually, "Oh, maybe Emily left it yesterday. I'll give it back to her later." His voice was calm, but I caught a flicker of unease in his eyes. I didn't question him. This was my husband, and she was my best friend. Trust came naturally, or at least it should have. That weekend, Emily joined us at a family gathering. She laughed loudly at all of David's jokes, leaning a little too close whenever they talked. At one point, I stepped outside to take a call. When I returned, I saw her leaning into him, whispering something. His lips curled into a faint, shy smile as she pulled back. The moment they noticed me, they both straightened instantly. Emily quickly changed the subject, and I forced a smile, though something inside me felt heavy. That night, lying beside David, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the image of Emily leaning close, of David smiling, of them both startled when they saw me. I stayed silent, but my chest tightened with a weight I couldn't shake. I turned on my side, closed my eyes, and lay still in the dark. The days that followed felt strangely unsettled. Nothing had actually happened. Yet, I couldn't stop noticing the little things. Emily's calls to David became more frequent. Sometimes she'd ask him for advice about things she never used to care about, like fixing her car or which restaurant she should try. She could have easily asked me, but she didn't. One afternoon, Emily came over when David was still at work. We sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee. She smiled as if everything was normal, but her phone kept buzzing on the counter. When she finally picked it up, I saw his name light up on her screen. David. My heart froze for a second. She quickly turned the phone over, almost too quickly, and said, "It's just work stuff. Nothing important." She laughed it off. But the unease in her tone made me look at her differently. That evening, when David came home, he seemed unusually cheerful. He kissed me on the forehead, humming as he loosened his tie, his phone still in his hand. Later, when he thought I wasn't watching, I noticed him smirking at a message. The glow of her screen lit up his face, and I recognized the same name, Emily. I wanted to believe it was innocent. I wanted to trust them both. But the lipstick, the whisper at the party, the messages, each one was another stone pressing on my chest. The following weekend, we all went to a small get-together with friends. Emily, as always, was the life of the evening. She laughed too loudly at David's stories, touched his arm a little too often. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that I was imagining things. But when I excused myself to go to the restroom and returned a moment later, I saw something that left me speechless. David and Emily were standing by the window, close enough for their shoulders to touch. She leaned toward him, her voice low, almost intimate, and he tilted his head as if hanging on to her every word. When they noticed me, they instantly moved apart. Emily plastered on her bright smile and began talking about something random, while David busied himself with his drink. I forced a smile, but my hands trembled as I held my glass. The warmth of the room felt suffocating, and every laugh around me rang hollow. That night, in bed beside David, I stared at the ceiling in silence. He scrolled on his phone, turning slightly away from me. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words never left my lips. My heart was pounding too hard, and my throat was tight. I lay still, pretending to be asleep, while inside me, a crack had begun to form, one I could no longer ignore. The following week, I tried to push my doubts aside. I told myself I was overthinking, that Emily and David were just close because we were all so connected. But no matter how hard I tried, the unease lingered like a shadow I couldn't escape. Emily came over one evening with a bottle of wine and her usual bright energy. She laughed and joked as if nothing was wrong. David seemed relaxed too, sitting comfortably on the couch beside her. I joined them, trying to match their energy. But every word, every glance between them felt like a secret I wasn't part of. When I went into the kitchen to grab some glasses, I paused. Through the half-open door, I could hear them. Emily's voice was soft, playful. She doesn't even notice when you're stressed. But I do. My chest tightened. I waited for David to defend me, to remind her that I was his wife. But his response was low, almost amused. "Don't say that, Emily." The words weren't harsh. They weren't angry. They sounded gentle. I froze in place, my hands gripping the counter. When I walked back in with the glasses, they both smiled as if nothing had been said. Emily reached for the bottle. pouring the wine, acting as though everything was perfectly normal. David avoided my eyes, keeping his attention on the TV. Later that night, I sat alone in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. My heart was pounding. My stomach twisted with nausea. I wanted to tell myself I misheard, that it was harmless. But deep down, I knew something was happening between them, something I couldn't yet prove, but something I could feel in my bones. The days grew heavier. David began working late more often, his excuses vague, his phone glued to his hand. Emily, meanwhile, called me less and called him more. Whenever I asked about her, he would change the subject quickly. Then one evening, while scrolling through social media, I stopped cold. Emily had posted a photo of a coffee mug captioned, "Best company, best night." My heart dropped as I looked closer. The reflection in the glass window behind her showed the faint outline of David's jacket. The same jacket he had been wearing when he left the house, claiming he had to stay late at work. My hands trembled as I held the phone. The truth was no longer just a suspicion, it was taking shape before my eyes. And for the first time, I began to wonder if the two people I trusted most were already betraying me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The picture of Emily's post haunted me all night. I stared at it over and over, zooming into the faint reflection of David's jacket in the cafe window. Every time I looked, the denial inside me weakened a little more. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, but instead I lay awake, listening to David's soft breathing beside me. He slept peacefully, unaware that my world was slowly unraveling. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I prepared breakfast, poured his coffee, and smiled when he kissed my cheek. But inside, I was crumbling. His phone buzzed on the table, and when I glanced at the screen, I saw her name again, Emily. He picked it up instantly, his voice unusually soft as he answered, walking away into the hallway. I sat frozen, the fork in my hand trembling. My best friend was calling my husband early in the morning, and he sounded like he didn't want me to hear a single word. That afternoon, Emily came over as if nothing was wrong. She breezed into the kitchen, hugging me tightly, her perfume lingering in the air. "I missed you," she said cheerfully, placing a box of pastries on the counter. I forced a smile, though my stomach churned. As we sat together, she chatted casually about work, about friends, about anything except David. But then her phone buzzed, and she quickly silenced it, sliding it face down on the table. For just a second, before the screen went dark, I saw his name, David. My heart sank. I wanted to scream, to grab the phone, to demand the truth. But instead, I simply excused myself, retreating to the bathroom where I leaned against the door, my chest heaving. I pressed a hand to my mouth, fighting back tears. Later that evening, when David returned home, Emily was still there. She laughed at something he said, brushing his arm lightly with her hand. He didn't move away. I stood there, watching my heart breaking piece by piece. And in that moment, I knew whatever was happening between them was no longer innocent. It was slipping into something deeper, something dangerous. I wasn't just imagining things anymore. The air inside the house had grown heavy, even in moments of laughter. There was a tension I could feel but couldn't touch. Every glance, every half smile between Emily and David gnawed at me. I told myself I needed proof, something undeniable before I could confront them. But proof was slipping through my fingers. hiding behind their careful smiles. A few nights later, as I was folding laundry in the bedroom, I heard David's phone buzz on the nightstand. He was in the shower. My hand shook as I reached for it, my heart thundering in my chest. I never went through his phone before. I trusted him too much. But tonight, something stronger than trust pushed me forward. The screen lit up. A message from Emily. I can't stop thinking about last night. The words blurred before my eyes as tears welled up. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers hovered, trembling, but before I could read more, I heard the water stop. Panic rushed through me. I placed the phone back exactly where it had been, grabbed the laundry basket, and walked quickly out of the room just as he stepped out with a towel wrapped around his waist. "Everything okay?" he asked casually, water dripping down his face. "Yeah," I whispered, forcing a smile, though my chest felt like it was caving in. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My husband was slipping away from me, and my best friend was pulling him closer with every stolen moment. The next day, I tried to pretend nothing had changed. I put on my makeup, wore my favorite dress, and cooked David's favorite meal. I wanted to remind him who I was to him, what we had built together. But during dinner, his eyes kept drifting toward his phone, lining up with messages he didn't let me see. After we ate, he excused himself, saying he had some work to finish. I stayed behind, cleaning up slowly, every sound in the quiet house echoing too loudly in my ears. My gaze landed on his jacket draped over the chair. Something inside me pushed me forward. With shaking hands, I reached into the pocket. There it was. A folded receipt from a cafe dated yesterday. 2 coffees. 1 dessert for 2 people. I sank into the chair. The paper crumpled in my hand. He had told me he was working late, but the truth was written in black ink. He hadn't been working. He had been with her. My chest tightened as tears blurred my vision. The proof I had been waiting for was finally here. And with it, the pieces of my marriage began to shatter. The cafe receipt stayed clenched in my hand long after David had gone upstairs. I sat at the table, staring at it until the ink seemed to blur. Every memory, every laugh, every promise we had shared together twisted into something bitter. He wasn't just slipping away, he was already gone, drifting into Emily's arms while I was left in the shadows. When I finally went upstairs, David was lying in bed, scrolling on his phone. He looked up and smiled faintly, as though nothing was wrong. I slipped beneath the covers beside him, hiding the storm that raged inside me. His arm reached around me loosely, and for a moment I let him hold me. But instead of warmth, all I felt was betrayal pressing against my skin. The following day, I tried to confront Emily indirectly. We met at a cafe, the same one I suspected she'd been with David in. She sat across from me, radiant as ever, her smile too wide, her laughter too free. "Emily," I said, watching her carefully, "you've been spending a lot of time with David lately." She blinked, then let out a light laugh. "Oh, Sarah!" "Don't be silly. He's like a brother to me." The words dripped with sweetness, but her eyes told a different story. They glimmered with something unspoken, a spark that wasn't meant for friendship. I forced a smile, though my nails dug into my palm beneath the table. That evening, when David returned home, I decided to test him. I mentioned casually that I had been at the cafe earlier, His fork paused midair for just a second before he continued eating, his face carefully blank. "Who were you with?" I asked softly. He looked up, his voice smooth. "Just colleagues." "Why?" I nodded slowly, forcing myself to act normal. But inside, I was screaming. The lies were piling up, heavy and suffocating, and he was delivering them with a calmness that made me question whether I ever knew him at all. Later that night, I walked past the guest bathroom and froze. The door was slightly open, and David's voice drifted through, low and hushed. "I'll see you tomorrow, yes." I can't wait either. My heart lurched violently. I stepped back into the shadows before he could see me. My hands shook, my chest burned, and the cafe receipt in my pocket felt like it was searing my skin. The betrayal was no longer just suspicion. It was alive. It was breathing. And it was happening right in front of me. The night after I overheard David's hushed words on the phone, I lay in bed staring at the darkness, listening to his steady breathing beside me. I wanted to shake him awake, demand the truth, but instead I remained silent, my heart heavy with 1,000 questions I wasn't ready to ask. The next morning, Emily showed up at our door as if she owned the place. She was dressed elegantly, her hair done as though she were heading to a date. Not a casual visit. She greeted me with a hug that felt more like mockery than affection. "David around?" she asked lightly, her eyes sparkling as she stepped inside without waiting for an answer. I forced a smile. "He's upstairs, getting ready." Her lips curved into a smile that lingered too long. She went to the living room, making herself comfortable on the couch. I watched her from the kitchen, every gesture of hers fueling the ache inside me. When David finally came downstairs, his face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. "Emily," he said warmly, as though her presence alone brought him joy. My chest tightened. He used to greet me that way. They laughed together, their voices filling the room while I sat quietly, invisible in my own home. At one point, Emily leaned in close to whisper something to him. His eyes widened briefly, then softened, and a faint blush colored his face. I felt the ground shift beneath me. That evening, when Emily finally left, I confronted David. "You've been spending a lot of time with her," I said quietly. He frowned, avoiding my eyes. "She's your best friend." "Sarah, you know that." "Why would you even say something like this?" His voice was calm, but it cut through me. He was turning the blame on me, making me feel guilty for noticing what was right in front of me. I swallowed hard and said nothing more. But the silence between us that night was louder than any argument. Days passed, and the distance grew. David's phone was always with him, locked, face down on the table. Emily came over more often, her presence filling every corner of our lives. And then came the night that broke me further. I walked into the kitchen to grab some water and froze. Through the reflection on the glass window, I saw them in the living room, Emily leaning into David, her hand resting lightly on his arm, his smile soft and unguarded. They didn't notice me standing there in the shadows. And in that moment, I realized my marriage, my friendship, my entire world was already slipping through my fingers. I couldn't sleep after what I saw in the reflection that night. The image of Emily's hand on David's arm, the way he smiled at her, kept replaying in my mind like a cruel movie I couldn't turn off. Every second of silence beside him in bed felt like a blade cutting into me. The next morning, I decided to test him again. Over breakfast, I said softly, "You and Emily seem very close these days. David's spoon paused over his bowl, then clattered back onto the table. His eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you trying to say, Sarah?" My throat tightened. "Nothing. I'm just noticing." He leaned back in his chair, his voice suddenly sharp. "She's your best friend. If you can't even trust her, what does that say about you?" The words stung. He wasn't just defending her, he was protecting her. That afternoon, I tried to distract myself with work, but my phone buzzed with a notification from Emily. A picture. She was at a restaurant, 2 glasses on the table. Her caption read, "Perfect company." My stomach twisted. I recognized the shirt. Sleeve in the edge of the frame it was David's. He hadn't even tried to hide it. I felt my hands go numb as the phone slipped onto the couch beside me. My best friend was flaunting what should have been mine, sending it straight to me like a cruel reminder. When David came home that night, I didn't say a word. He kissed my forehead absent-mindedly, set his phone on the nightstand, and went into the bathroom to shower. My hands moved on. Their own. I picked up his phone. Locked. The passcode had been changed. A wave of cold washed over me. He wasn't just hiding things anymore. He was shutting me out completely. I placed the phone back and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. My heart was breaking, but my silence was louder than any scream I could have made. And in that silence, I knew something with certainty. I was losing both of them, piece by piece, while they grew closer right in front of my eyes. The days that followed were unbearable. David came home later and later. His excuses rehearsed, his smile forced. I stopped asking questions because every answer cut deeper than silence. Emily, on the other hand, grew bolder. She called me less, but when she did, her tone was different, almost smug, as if she knew something I didn't. One evening she said, "Sarah, you know you're so lucky to have David. He's special." Her voice lingered on his name in a way that made my stomach turn. That night, I stood at the kitchen counter, staring at the dinner I had prepared. David walked in, glancing at his phone before sitting down. He barely touched the food. Instead, he kept smiling faintly at whatever lit up his screen. I watched him in silence, my fork untouched. Every vibration, every little laugh he let slip it was all for her. Later. When he went upstairs, I followed quietly, my heart pounding. He didn't notice me standing in the hallway as he stepped into the guest room. Phone pressed to his ear. "I miss you too." His voice was low, tender. "Tomorrow night. Same place." The words hit me like a knife. I covered my mouth, forcing myself not to make a sound. My knees felt weak, and I pressed against the wall to keep from collapsing. When he finally hung up and stepped out, I rushed into our bedroom, slipping under the covers and pretending to be asleep. My body shook beneath the sheets, but I kept my eyes shut, listening as he climbed into bed beside me. Smelling faintly of cologne I didn't recognize, tears burned at the back of my eyes. The man lying next to me was no longer mine. And worst of all, the woman he whispered to in the dark was the very person I once trusted more than anyone else in the world. The following evening, David told me he had to stay late at the office again. His tone was casual, his expression unreadable. But my heart no longer believed him. The receipt, the whispers, the late-night phone calls, every piece fit together into a truth I didn't want to face. After he left, I sat in the living room with the lights dimmed. staring at the clock. Hours passed. My chest ached with every tick of the second hand. Finally, unable to take it any longer, I grabbed my coat and keys. I drove aimlessly at first, unsure what I was searching for. But deep down, I already knew. My car slowed outside the small cafe downtown, the same one where Emily had posted her photos before. And there, through the window, I saw them, David and Emily, sitting close, their heads bent together as if the world around them didn't exist. She laughed at something he said, her hand brushing against his on the table. He didn't pull away. His smile was soft, intimate, the kind of smile he used to save only for me. My chest tightened, and tears blurred my vision. I parked farther down the street, hidden in the shadows, and watched as they sipped their drinks, as if they were the only two people who mattered. When David leaned closer, whispering something that made her blush, my breath caught. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned. White, the reality was no longer just suspicion, or a guess it was unfolding. Right in front of me, I stayed there until they finally stood to. Leave. He placed a gentle hand on her back as they walked out together, her smile glowing in the streetlights. They disappeared into the night while I sat frozen in my car, my heart breaking into pieces I wasn't sure I could ever put back together. Driving home, my mind was numb. I pulled into the driveway, sat there for a long time, and finally forced myself inside. The house was dark, silent, but I could still hear their laughter echoing in my head. I collapsed onto the couch, the weight of betrayal pressing me down. The two people I trusted most, my husband and my best friend, had become strangers before my very eyes. And I knew this was only the beginning of the storm. When David came home later that night, he acted as though nothing had happened. He dropped his keys on the counter, kissed my forehead, and said he was exhausted from work. I stood there in the dim light of the living room, staring at him, my heart pounding with the truth I could no longer deny. But I said nothing. Instead, I smiled faintly, forcing myself to hide the storm inside me. He didn't notice the redness around my eyes. Or maybe he chose not to. He went upstairs, humming quietly as though his world was perfectly intact. I remained on the couch long after, clutching a cushion against my chest, suffocating in silence. The next day, Emily texted me, "Thinking of you. Let's plan a girls' night soon." That my hands trembled as I read the message. She wanted to keep me close, to play the part of the loyal friend while slipping deeper into my husband's life. I could almost hear her laugh as she typed those words. I agreed to meet her, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see her eyes when she lied to me. We met at a small wine bar. Emily arrived glowing, her lips painted that same red shade I had found on the sofa weeks ago. She hugged me tightly, as if nothing between us had changed. "Sarah," she said warmly, "I feel like I haven't seen you in forever." I studied her face, the way her smile stretched too perfectly, her eyes darting away when I held her gaze too long. She talked endlessly about her job, her friends, meaningless stories to fill the space. Not once did she mention David. Not once did she slip. But I noticed the faint mark on her wrist, bracelet, a men's leather band I recognized. Instantly, I'd given it to David for his birthday last year. My throat tightened. My wine glass trembled in my hand. "Nice bracelet," I whispered, She glanced at it, then quickly tugged her sleeve down, her cheeks flushing. "Oh, this... just something I found." Her voice cracked on the word found. I smiled weakly, pretending not to notice, but inside my blood ran cold. She was wearing his gift. That night, when I returned home, David was already asleep. I slid into bed beside him. Staring at the bracelet still burned into my mind. The web of lies was tightening around me, and I was caught in the middle. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was war, and I was losing. The bracelet never left my mind. Every time I looked at David, I pictured it around Emily's wrist. Every time he smiled at me, I wondered if that same smile had been hers first. The lies were stacking too high to ignore. The next morning, over breakfast, I watched him carefully. He scrolled on his phone, absent-mindedly sipping his coffee while I sat silent, clutching the memory of Emily tugging her sleeve down. Finally, I asked, "Do you still wear the bracelet I gave you?" He looked up briefly, surprised. Then he forced a quick smile. "Of course I do. Why?" But his wrist was bare. I swallowed hard, nodding slowly, pretending to accept his answer. My heart, however, knew the truth. That evening, I decided I couldn't stay in the dark any longer. I followed him. He said he was heading to the office to finish some late work. I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my keys and drove quietly behind him. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel, my chest tight with dread. He didn't drive toward the office. He turned instead toward a quiet part of town, a row of small restaurants and bars lit by warm yellow lights. My car slowed as I spotted his parked vehicle. And just beyond it, Emily, standing outside, her coat wrapped around her, her face lighting up the second she saw him. My stomach twisted. They embraced quickly. Not like friends, but like something more. Then they walked inside together. Close, familiar, comfortable. I sat in my car, frozen. The proof I'd been searching for was right there, painted across the night. The man I loved and the friend I trusted, slipping into the glow of the restaurant as if they belonged to each other. Tears blurred my vision, but I couldn't look away. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching the door, my heart breaking with every passing minute. When they finally emerged, Emily's hand brushed his as they laughed softly under the street lamp. He leaned toward her, his expression tender, intimate. I couldn't breathe. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my hands ached. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my tears had dried, leaving only a hollow ache in my chest. That night, lying beside David as he slept peacefully, I made a silent promise to myself. The lies were over. The pretending was over. The truth was coming. The silence in my home was no longer peace, it was poison. David went about his days as though nothing had changed, smiling faintly, speaking softly, tucking his phone away whenever I entered the room. Emily, too, played her part, sending me cheerful texts about catching up soon, as if the lies weren't choking us all. But inside me, the storm was breaking. One evening, as David prepared to leave again for work, I stood at the doorway, watching him tie his shoes. My voice was calm, but my heart hammered against my ribs. "Who is she?" I asked. His hands froze for a split second before he looked up, feigning confusion. "What do you mean?" I swallowed hard, my eyes fixed on his. "You know what I mean? The late nights, the calls, the lies." "David, who is she?" For the first time, I saw a flicker of panic cross his face, but then it vanished, replaced by a practiced smile. Sarah, you're overthinking. You've been stressed. Emily even told me she's worried about you. Hearing her name from his, lips felt like a knife twisting inside me. He was using her to cover the very betrayal that bound them together. I nodded slowly, forcing myself to step back. You're right. Maybe I am. He kissed my forehead and left, his cologne lingering in the doorway long after he was gone. But I didn't collapse this time. I didn't cry. Instead, I pulled out my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in months, Anna. Another old friend of ours who had grown distant after Emily came closer. When Anna's voice answered, warm but cautious, I asked quietly, did you ever notice anything between David and Emily? There was a pause on the line. A pause too long to be innocent. Finally, Anna sighed. Sarah, I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but yes. I've seen things, the way they look at each other, the way they disappear together at parties. I thought maybe you already knew. My hand trembled around the phone. Why didn't you say anything? Because I didn't want to hurt you. Emily, she's always been competitive with you. I thought you'd see it for yourself sooner or later. Tears filled my eyes, but my voice came out steady. I see it now. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, the weight of confirmation pressing down on me. It wasn't just my imagination. It wasn't paranoia. It was real. And soon, neither of them would be able to deny it. The truth was no longer hidden in shadows. It had stepped into the light. Anna's words echoed in my head for days, each one carving deeper into the wound I carried. Emily has always been competitive with you. I thought you'd see it for yourself. I couldn't shake the thought. David moved around the house as if nothing was wrong. He smiled at me, kissed me goodbye, and returned home late smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. Emily's perfume. Every time he spoke her name, casually slipping it into conversation, I felt my blood run cold. I stopped eating with him at the table. I stopped waiting for him in bed. My silence became my shield. And he either didn't notice or didn't care. But I noticed everything. One evening, I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone when Emily's message appeared on the screen. Can I come over tomorrow? I miss you. The audacity made my stomach turn. She wanted to sit in my living room, drink coffee with me, smile as if she hadn't already stolen the heart of the man I married. I typed back a single word. Yes, but I wasn't agreeing out of kindness. I was planning. That night, I lay awake in the dark, listening to David's steady breathing beside me. My mind replayed the cafe, the bracelet, the whispered calls in the hallway. All of it lined up into one undeniable truth. I thought about the years Emily and I had spent together, the sleepovers, the secrets, the promises that we'd never betray each other. And yet, here she was, shattering every vow we ever made. And David, the man I thought would protect me, cherish me, love me above all else. He had become a stranger with secrets that smelled of betrayal. I turned my face toward the ceiling, my jaw tightening. Tomorrow would not be like every other day. Tomorrow, I would finally look her in the eyes and ask her what she had done to me. No more excuses. No more pretending. The next morning, I woke with a heaviness pressing on my chest, the kind that comes before a storm. David left early, claiming he had an important meeting. I watched him drive away, wondering if he was heading to an office or to her. Hours later, Emily arrived, She looked radiant as always, dressed in a way that felt almost deliberate. Her hair perfectly curled, her perfume trailing behind her like a signature. She hugged me tightly at the door, her smile bright, her eyes glistening. "Sarah, it feels like forever," she chirped, slipping off her coat and settling onto the couch as if it were her own home. "I made coffee." My hands steady though my heart was pounding. When I brought the mugs into the living room, I sat across from her, studying every movement, every flutter of her lashes, every casual smile. She talked endlessly, her words flowing like honey about work, about friends, about a new dress she had bought. But beneath her cheerful tone, I saw it. A flicker in her eyes, a shadow that told me she knew exactly what she was hiding. I let her speak for a while before I finally leaned forward, my voice calm but sharp. "Emily, are you and David hiding something from me?" The room fell silent. Her smile faltered for just a second before returning, weaker this time. "What do you mean?" she asked with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. I held her gaze. "Don't lie to me. I saw you at the cafe with him." Her breath caught. For a moment, her mask slipped, the confident, charming Emily vanished, and all that remained was someone caught in the act. But just as quickly, she recovered. "Sarah," she said softly, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "you're imagining things. You've been under so much stress lately." "I would never—" "Stop." I cut her off, my tone sharper than I intended. My hands trembled around the coffee cup. "Don't pretend. I know what's going on. You're not just my friend anymore. You're something else to him." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily set her cup down slowly, her expression unreadable. Then, with a small, almost cruel smile, she tilted her head. "Sarah, sometimes people change. Sometimes love changes. Maybe you should ask yourself why David looks for something outside of this marriage." Her words sliced through me, crueler than any confession. She didn't admit it, but she didn't deny it either. She didn't need to. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall in front of her. Instead, I sat still, my chest aching, while Emily leaned back on the couch as if she had already won. After Emily left that afternoon, the house felt colder than ever. Her words lingered in the air, poisoning every corner of the room. "Maybe you should ask yourself why David looks for something outside of this marriage." I sat on the couch for hours, my mind replaying her expression, that cruel little smile that said more than any confession ever could. She wanted me broken. She wanted me to know she had taken what was mine. When I finally heard David's car in the driveway, my heart raced. This time, I wouldn't stay silent. This time, I needed the truth from him. Not through receipts, reflections, or whispers, but from his own lips. He walked in with his usual tired smile. "Hey," he said, setting his keys on the counter. "How was your day?" I stood in the living room, my arms crossed, my eyes fixed on him. "Who is she?" His head lifted slowly, his brow furrowing. "What?" I took a step closer. My voice trembled, but it carried a strength I hadn't felt before. "Don't play dumb." "David, I know. I've seen the cafe receipts. The phone calls, the way you look at her, silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, he ran a hand through his hair, sighing. "Sarah, you're overthinking. Emily is your friend. She cares about us." Stop, I snapped, my voice breaking. Don't you dare say her name like that. Not after what I heard. Not after what I saw. His jaw tightened. He avoided my eyes, staring instead at the floor. That single gesture, his refusal to meet my gaze, was louder than any confession. Tears stung my eyes, but I pressed forward. Tell me the truth, David. Do you love her? The question hung in the air, sharp and unbearable. For a moment, I saw a word flicker across his face: guilt, shame, denial, all flashing in his eyes at once. But then he swallowed, his lips parting to speak. I don't want to hurt you, Sarah. The world tilted beneath me. My breath caught. My knees felt weak. He hadn't said no. He hadn't denied it. In that instant, the last thread holding my heart together snapped. I turned away from him, my hand covering my mouth to stifle a sob. Behind me, I heard him step forward, his voice low, pleading, Sarah, please? It's not what you think. I still care about you. But I couldn't listen anymore. His words were nothing but daggers. I rushed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door behind me, pressing my back against it as the tears finally poured. Downstairs, I heard him pacing, calling my name, but nothing he said could reach me now. The night after David's half-confession, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the empty street, my mind unraveling with every thought. His words echoed over and over, I don't want to hurt you, but he already had. And so had she. By dawn, my tears had dried, leaving behind something sharper. Resolve. I couldn't keep living in the shadows of their lies. If they wanted to betray me, then they would have to do it openly, with their masks torn away. The following day, I avoided David as much as possible. He tried to speak to me over breakfast, his tone careful, but I barely answered. He left for work, and I didn't even bother pretending to believe him. Instead, I called Emily. My voice was steady when I said, Come over tonight. I need to talk to you. She hesitated, then agreed. When David returned home that evening, he looked uneasy. I was waiting in the living room, the air thick with tension. Emily's coming, I said flatly. His eyes flickered, and for a moment, panic washed across his face before he hid it. Why? He asked, forcing a calm tone. Because we all need to talk. He said nothing, just nodded, his jaw tight. Hours later, the doorbell rang. My heart pounded as I opened it to find Emily standing there, perfectly put together, her smile polite but nervous. She stepped inside, her eyes darting toward David immediately. The three of us sat in the living room, a triangle of silence stretching between us. I placed my coffee mug down and looked from one to the other, my voice calm but cold. No more lies. Not from either of you. David shifted uncomfortably. Emily crossed her legs, pretending composure, but I saw her fingers fidgeting in her lap. I know what's been happening, I continued. I've seen it. I've heard it. And I'm done pretending I don't. Emily's lips parted, but no words came out. David leaned forward, his voice low. Sarah, please, but I cut him off. Don't, not this time. You've both been hiding behind excuses, behind half-truths. Tonight, I want the truth from both of you, right here, right now. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the faint tick of the clock on the wall. Emily finally exhaled, her smile slipping into something sharper, almost cruel. Well, maybe it's time you stop playing the victim. Sarah, David's head shot toward her, his eyes widening. But she didn't stop. She leaned forward, her voice steady, almost proud. Because, yes, there's something between us. And it's real. Emily's words hung in the air like a blade. Yes, there's something between us, and it's real. The world seemed to tilt. My chest burned, but I forced myself to sit tall, to meet her eyes without flinching. You had the audacity, I whispered, my voice trembling with rage, to sit in my house, drink from my cups, laugh with me, while you were stealing my husband? David shifted forward quickly. Sarah, don't. It's not like that. Not like that. I snapped, turning to him. My voice cracked under the weight of my pain. Then tell me what it's like. David, tell me what loving my best friend feels like. Tell me how you kiss her after lying to me. After holding me at night as if nothing's wrong. His face crumbled, shame flickering in his eyes. But Emily leaned back, her arms crossed, her smirk unshaken. Don't blame him for everything, she said coldly. He came to me because he needed something you couldn't give. My breath hitched. Something I couldn't give? She leaned forward, her voice low, deliberate. Attention. Excitement. Passion. You've been so busy playing the perfect wife that you forgot how to be. Alive, David buried his face in his hands. Emily... Stop, but she didn't. She wanted me to break. I rose to my feet, my body trembling, my voice shaking with fury. You were supposed to be my sister, my safe place. And all this time, you were circling like a vulture, waiting for your chance to take what wasn't yours. Emily's smile faltered for the first time, her eyes hardening. Maybe he was never truly yours. Sarah, the words hit like glass shattering inside me. David finally stood, his voice breaking. Enough! Both of you stop. He looked between us, torn, guilt written all over him. This isn't how I wanted this to come out. I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. Oh! And how did you want it to come out, David? Did you plan to keep sneaking around until I found out on my own? Or until she replaced me completely? His silence was my answer. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. You've both taken everything from me, my trust, my marriage, my friendship, but you won't take my dignity. Emily's lips pressed into a thin line, her composure wavering. David reached out as if to calm me, but I stepped back away from his touch. The room was suffocating, the air thick with betrayal, words echoing like cracks in the walls of everything I thought I knew. David stood frozen, his hand half raised as though reaching for me could erase what had just spilled from Emily's mouth. Emily, meanwhile, sat like a queen on her throne, her shoulders straight, her chin tilted upward in defiance. And me, I was caught between rage and heartbreak, but I knew one thing. I couldn't crumble in front of them. Not anymore. I grabbed my coffee mug from the table, my fingers shaking so hard it almost slipped. You know what's funny? My voice was sharp, almost bitter. I trusted you both more than anyone else. I let you into my life, my heart, my home. And now, sitting here, I realized this was never about me. It was about you two. Always you two. Emily opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off with a raised hand. Don't. Not another word. I don't need your excuses or your poison. I turned to David, my eyes burning. And you were supposed to protect me. Instead, you protected her. His lips parted. Guilt etched across his face. "Sarah, please, no," I said firmly, my voice breaking but steady. "I begged for honesty, and you gave me lies. I begged for love, and you gave it to someone else." For the first time, I saw his shoulders slump, the weight of his betrayal pulling him down. But it was too late. The damage was done. I set the mug down. The clink loud in the silence. "This marriage, this friendship, it's over." Emily's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She hadn't expected me to be the one to end it. David staggered a step closer, desperation in his voice. "Sarah, don't say that. We can fix this." I shook my head slowly, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "No. David, you broke it, and she helped you." I turned away from both of them, walking toward the staircase. Each step felt heavy, but with each one, a strange strength began to rise inside me. At the top of the stairs, I paused, glancing back only once. David's face was pale, broken. Emily's smirk had vanished, replaced by something colder, harder. "Enjoy each other," I whispered, my voice trembling, "because you'll never have me again." And then I walked into the bedroom, closing the door behind me, leaving them to sit in the wreckage they had created together. The house felt different after that night. Quieter, heavier, like its walls had absorbed every word, every tear, every betrayal. I stayed locked in the bedroom for hours, listening to muffled voices downstairs, David pleading, Emily's sharp replies. Eventually, the front door slammed, and silence followed. When I finally stepped out, the living room was empty. No trace of Emily, no trace of David, just the echo of what had shattered between us. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my wedding ring. It felt heavy on my finger now, like a chain rather than a promise. Slowly, with trembling hands, I slipped it off and placed it on the table. The metal clinked against the wood, final and unforgiving. The next morning, David tried again. He stood in the doorway of the bedroom, his eyes red, his voice low. "Sarah, please, I made a mistake. We can work through this. We've been through so much together. Don't let her ruin us." I looked at him, my chest aching, my voice steady. "She didn't ruin us." "David, you did." His face crumpled, but I didn't look away. For the first time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger who had chosen my best friend over me. Later that day, I packed a small bag, just the essentials. I couldn't stay in that house another night, surrounded by the ghosts of laughter that no longer belonged to me. I called Anna. Her voice, when she answered, was warm but hesitant. "Sarah, can I stay with you for a while?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my best efforts. Without hesitation, she said, "Of course, come right now." When I arrived, she hugged me tighter than anyone had in months. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself cry into someone's shoulder, the pain spilling out in broken sobs. "I don't know how to start over," I whispered. Anna pulled back, her eyes firm but kind. "You don't have to know. You just have to take the first step. And you already have." That night, lying on a guest bed in our apartment, I stared at the ceiling. My world had collapsed, yes. But maybe, just maybe, something new could rise from the ruins. I had lost a husband. I had lost a friend. But I hadn't lost myself. Life at Anna's apartment felt both foreign and safe. For the first time in years, I didn't wake up to David's footsteps or Emily's text. The air was lighter here, untouched by lies. Anna made me tea in the mornings, sitting with me in silence when words were too heavy. She didn't push. She didn't pry. She simply let me exist. And that alone felt like healing. But healing is never that simple. On the third day, my phone buzzed with a message. My heart lurched when I saw her name. Emily, we need to talk. You can't just disappear. David needs me. And honestly, I think you owe it to yourself to hear me out. My fingers tightened around the phone. Owe it to myself? After everything she'd taken? After everything she'd admitted? I didn't reply, but the message stayed burned into my mind. Later that evening, Anna noticed me staring at my screen. Her? She asked softly. I nodded. Delete it, she said firmly. She feeds on the attention. Sarah, don't give her the satisfaction. I wanted to. God. I wanted to, but something inside me refused. It wasn't weakness. It was fire. Emily wasn't just trying to win David. She wanted to break me. Erase me. Prove she was stronger. But she didn't know me as well as she thought. The next day, I went for a walk through the city. The cool breeze hit my face. And for the first time in weeks, I felt my lungs expand fully. People bustled around me, laughing, living, moving forward. And in their faces, I saw something I had forgotten life goes on. When I returned, Anna was waiting with a small smile. You look different, she said. Do I? I asked. She nodded. Stronger. Like you're starting to remember who you are. That night, I wrote in a journal for the first time in years. I poured out everything, my heartbreak, my rage, my shattered trust. And as the words filled the page, something inside me shifted. Emily thought she had taken everything. David thought I'd crumble without him. The days at Anna's slowly stitched me back together. Not perfectly. Not cleanly, more like scars forming over wounds still tender. But scars meant survival. Every morning, I woke to sunlight instead of shadows. I brewed my own coffee, sat by the window, and reminded myself, I'm still here. But peace never lasts when betrayal lingers. One evening, Anna came home with a stiff look on her face. She dropped her keys on the counter and turned to me. I ran into Emily today. My chest tightened instantly. Where? At the cafe near my office. Anna's lips pressed into a thin line. She saw me and made sure I heard her. Heard what? I asked, though part of me already knew. Anna hesitated, then said it plainly. She said David's moving in with her. The words sliced clean through me. My hands trembled, gripping the edge of the counter for support. I had imagined it, feared it, but hearing it aloud was different. Real, brutal. Emma's eyes softened. She wanted me to tell you. Sarah, she wanted you to break. That's who she is. I sank into a chair, my throat burning. So that's her victory, I whispered, caking him, taking everything. But even as I said it, something inside me stirred, a defiance I hadn't felt in years. No, I said firmly, almost surprising myself. She hasn't taken everything. She doesn't get me. Anna smiled faintly, relief flickering across her face. That's the Sarah I know. That night, I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my journal again. I wrote until my hand ached every memory, every betrayal, every shred of rage and resilience. By the time I set the pen down, The page was filled not with grief, but with power. Emily wanted me broken. David wanted me silent. I didn't plan it, but fate has a way of forcing the inevitable. 3 days after Anna told me about David moving in with Emily, I saw her. It was in the grocery store. Of all places, a place where ordinary lives continued, where people pushed carts filled with bread and milk, laughing, unaware of the storms raging inside others. She spotted me first. Her lips curved into that familiar smirk. Polished and venomous, she walked toward me with the confidence of someone who believed she had won. Well, Emily said, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Sarah, you look better than I expected. I straightened my shoulders, meeting her gaze, and you look exactly as I expected, hungry for attention. Her smile faltered. Just slightly. Still sharp, she said. But tell me, how does it feel knowing he chose me? The words hit, but they didn't pierce. Not anymore. I kept my voice steady. It feels like I finally see both of you for who you really are. And trust me, that's worth more than keeping either of you in my life. Her eyes narrowed. You think you're stronger than this? But I know you. You can't stand being alone. I leaned closer, lowering my voice. You're wrong. Being alone is freedom. Being with you? That was the real prison. For the first time, her smirk cracked, just a flicker, but I saw it, and it fueled me. Enjoy your victory, Emily, I said, pushing my cart past her, because it won't last. Men who betray once, betray again. One day you'll feel the same knife in your back. And when you do, remember I warned you. Her face stiffened, her bravado slipping for the briefest second before she forced another smile. We'll see. I walked away, my hands shaking, my heart pounding, but for once not from fear, from power. I had faced her, and I hadn't broken. That night, I told Anna what happened. She squeezed my hand, pride shining in her eyes. That's it. Sarah, you've taken back control. It had been weeks since I last saw David. I had convinced myself he was gone for good, lost in Emily's orbit, swallowed by her manipulations and his own weakness. I was learning to live without him step by painful step, but then he showed up. It was late evening when the knock came at Anna's door. I froze. She looked at me with a question in her eyes before opening it, and there he was, David. His hair was messy, his eyes hollow, his clothes wrinkled like he hadn't slept in days. He looked nothing like the man who had once stood so confidently beside me. Sarah, he said softly, his voice breaking, please, can we talk? I stood in the hallway, gripping the edge of the wall for balance. My throat tightened. Why are you here, David? He took a step forward, desperation written across his face. Because I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Emily, she's not who I thought she was. She's controlling, jealous, toxic. Being with her it's destroying me. I stared at him, my chest aching with both anger and pity. And now you realize that? My voice was sharp, laced with pain. Now, after betraying me with her in my own home, after tearing apart our marriage and my friendship, he shook his head violently. I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear, Sarah, I never stopped loving you. I was weak. I was stupid. But please, give me another chance. The words stung because once not so long ago, I would have given anything to hear them. But now, they felt hollow. Too late. I stepped closer, my eyes locked on his. You loved me? Then why did you look at her the way you used to look at me? Why did you let her turn you against me? His lips trembled. He had no answer. Behind me, Anna spoke firmly. You should go. David, but he didn't move. He reached out, his hand shaking. Sarah? Please, I don't want Emily. I want you. I want us back. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at the man who had once been my whole world and who had shattered it with his choices. My heart ached, but my voice was steady when I finally spoke. You don't get to want me now. David, not after everything. His hand dropped, his shoulders sagging under the weight of my words. For the first time, he seemed to understand that he had truly lost me. I turned away, walking back into the apartment, my voice quiet but firm. Goodbye. David, Anna closed the door, and silence filled the space. My body trembled, but inside, something powerful surged. The night David came back was the night I finally understood something I should have known all along. Closure doesn't come from apologies. Closure comes from yourself. He had begged, pleaded, cried, but none of it erased what he had done. And I realized, standing in Anna's apartment with my heart still beating strong, that I didn't need his love to heal. I didn't need Emily's betrayal to define me. I only needed me. Days turned into weeks, and life began to rebuild itself slowly, quietly, beautifully. I got a new job at a small publishing house. Something I had always dreamed of but never pursued because life with David had consumed me. Now I poured myself into it, rediscovering passions I thought were long gone. Emily tried once more to reach out another text. Another attempt to provoke me, but I deleted it without hesitation. She no longer had power over me, and David? I never saw him again. Not truly. He became a memory, a lesson, a scar that no longer bled. One evening, as I sat with Anna on our balcony, watching the city lights flicker like stars, she asked me, "Do you regret it? Walking away?" I smiled softly, the first genuine smile in what felt like forever. No, I regret staying too long, but I'll never regret leaving. The wind brushed against my face, carrying away the last traces of the life I had lost. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. Because the truth was simple. Emily could take my husband. She could take my trust. She could even take the years I'd given her as a friend.